Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Good morning, Crosspointe, and Happy New Year. It's January 7th, and I'm in a borrowed space, office/studio space today. And I wanted to show you, I'm looking out the windows here. I wanted to show you what I'm seeing as I'm playing this. But I just wanted to welcome you to our online service for the first online service for the year. Glad that you're with us, and lots to come in 2024 that we're really excited about, and we're glad that you're along for the ride. If you haven't, let us know who you are, and you don't also attend in person where we might have a chance to know you. Reach out to us, church@crosspointe.org, and just let us know who you are and where you are, where you're tuning in from, and how you've found Crosspointe. We love to hear those stories that we get to hear from time to time from those of you that don't live locally. So please take the time to do that if you're part of Crosspointe and aren't local and we have no way of knowing who you are. We're going to start out today with a song. It's a favorite song of mine for a long time. It's called New Day, and it's by an artist, friend of ours at Crosspointe in Texas called Robbie C. Band, and the song's called New Day. Hope you enjoy. Gonna sing this song to let you know that you're not alone. And if you're like me, you need hope, a coffee and a melody. So sit back down and let the world keep spinning round. 'Cause yesterday's gone and today is waiting on you to show your face. And it might not be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see, but it's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. And it might not look like a beautiful sunrise, but it's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. I'm a pilgrim soul, I've traveled far to come back home. And this land is hard and cold for those who long to love. And I know it might seem that the world is crumbling, but it's me and you dancing in the kitchen at 2 a.m. and we're still alive. And it might not be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see, but it's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. And it might not look like a beautiful sunrise. It's a new day. Oh, baby, it's a new day. It's the calm of the storm that comes blowing in. It's the springtime saying I'm back again. The clouds roll by across the moonlight. Me and you, love, everything's alright. Standing in the rain with nowhere to go, laughing and we're spinning, and I hope that you remember this day for the rest of your life. Me and you, love, everything's gonna be alright. And it just might be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see. It's a new day, oh baby, it's a new day. And if you look outside to see the beautiful sunrise, it's a new day, it's a new day, it's a new day. And it just might be the prettiest thing that you'll ever see. Oh, it's a new day, oh baby, it's a new day. And if you look outside, you'll see a beautiful sunrise. It's a new day, oh, it's a new day. Oh, it's the calm of the storm that comes blowing in. It's the springtime saying I'm back again. The clouds roll by across the moonlight. Me and you, love, everything's alright. Standing in the rain with nowhere to go, laughing and we're spinning, and I hope that you remember this day for the rest of your life. Me and you, love, everything's gonna be alright. I'm gonna sing this song to let you know that you're not alone. And if you're like me, you need hope, coffee and a melody, yeah.
Yes, I understand that every life must end on. As we sit alone, I know someday we must go on. Oh, I'm a lucky man to count on both hands the ones I love. Some folks just have one, yeah, others they got none. Stay with me, let's just breathe. Practiced all my sins, never gonna let me win. We're under everything, just another human being. Yeah, I don't wanna hurt. There's so much in this world to make me believe. Stay with me, you're all I see. Did I say that I need you? Did I say that I want you? Oh, if I didn't, I'm a fool, you see. No one knows this more than me. As I complete, I wonder every day as I look upon your face. Everything you give and nothing you would take on. Nothing you would take. Everything you gave. Did I say that I need you? Did I say that I want you? Oh, if I didn't, I'm a fool, you see.
Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. And yet it is the law of all progress that is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that it may take a very long time. And so, I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on, as though you could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of you tomorrow. Only God could say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that His hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete.
Hey Crosspointe, I have a couple of announcements for you today. First, on January 13th, there's opportunity for you to drop your kids off, babies through 5th grade, to have a parents' night out. All the money raised for this event is going to go to our students who will be going on service trips this summer. So this is middle and high school students. If you are interested in finding out more about that, you can go to crosspoint.org and you'll see right on our webpage the Parents' Night Out tab, and you can find out more and sign your kids up. And we really encourage you to take the night off and let our students raise a little bit of money watching your kids and having a great time. Second, we host dinners for Family Promise of the Triangle every single year. And coming up January 14th through the 19th, we will be providing dinners for families experiencing homelessness in Raleigh. And we need your help. We just need you to sign up to bring dinner for these families. And you can find that link at crosspoint.org/serve or just on our main webpage, crosspoint.org, with more information. For both of those things, you can email community@crosspoint.org for more info if you need it. Lastly, as always, if you want to partner with us financially, you can go to crosspoint.org/contribute. You can find multiple ways to do that to start getting involved as far as contributing financially in 2024. I hope that your week and your year is off to a great start. Mine's off to a walk in the park. Thanks so much.
There's something to be said about new beginnings. A new pair of glasses, the Amazon delivery at your door, the end of one book and the launch of another. New Year's resolutions, spring, babies, new year, new you, out with the old, in with the new. Beginning new things is, at least in theory, a really good practice. And most of us might agree that's something that should be repeated throughout the year, not just in the aftershock of the holidays that have wreaked havoc on our minds and our bodies. It's at this time of year that we're more likely to find ourselves guilted or challenged by others, by ourselves, by some sense of tradition or obligation to create or begin something brand new. And I suppose the start of a new year is as good a time to do that as any. Sometimes new beginnings are necessary and they're beautiful. Sometimes we need to throw out the things that no longer serve us well, or that no longer accurately or adequately define who we are or who we want to be. Sometimes we choose new beginnings. Sometimes they're forced upon us. And I want to wrestle today with the idea that perhaps in this season of out with the old and in with the new, what we need to hear, or at least what I need to hear, is not that I need to be or begin something brand new, but that who I am, the practices that I've already cultivated in my life, the things that I've already chosen to invest in, they're enough. There is something to be said about new beginnings. But there's also something to be said about fortification. And I mean fortification in the verb form, the act of fortifying, of taking what already exists and, according to this definition, adding strength, courage, or endurance to, strengthening and enhancing through the addition of something. Fortification is not beginning anew, but rather it's building upon an already solid, existing foundation. And fortification feels more honest to me this year for some reason, because we as a community know who we are. And I feel like I know who I want to be. And my journey has taken me not always smoothly or directly, but somehow successfully to this point. And I'm not willing to throw all of that out. Even if you might not describe yourself or your situation as currently successful, I would suggest that perhaps there's enough in the bones and the marrow of where and who you are to not throw it all out. So you might say that my resolution this year is to not have a new beginning, a new year, new me, but to rather focus my efforts and energy on fortifying the good foundations that already exist. This isn't a new idea. We can reach way back to the first chapters of Christian sacred text and find that not only do we, humanity, bear the image of God, but that God called us, our foundations, our breath, our bones, and our marrow of us, good. And I want to cultivate that. I want to fortify that. I want to recognize what is already good and strong, and offer it more nourishment. There's an old house in our neighborhood that has been there much longer than we have. And when you leave my driveway for a walk, you have to choose to turn left or right at the end of the street. And for the past 7 years, if you chose to go left, after you walked past the house with the geese and the chickens and the one with the cool signs on the outbuilding and past the road that leads to a scary cul-de-sac, there was a small house on the left side of the road that sat in front of this large field. And I should probably tell you now that I live in Apex, not Cary. There was enough acreage on this land that a regular lawnmower wouldn't cut it. Old trees shaded it on every side, and sometimes when you'd walk by, there'd be this significant group of deer gathered all around it. Well, about a year ago, we noticed that the people in that house had moved out. We didn't think much of it. Then there were a few months that at the end of our street, we chose to turn right instead of left on our walk. And then when we finally got around to taking that left, past the geese and the chickens and the house with the cool signs and the scary cul-de-sac, we realized that the house that was there had just disappeared. There was no sign of it having been demolished. It simply wasn't there. And there was nothing in its place. It was just an empty field. There was no new buildings. There was a mailbox with no home behind it, but the house wasn't there. So for about 5 minutes, we contemplated the mystery until we realized that the house actually still existed, but it had moved to the lot on the other side of the street. And like the responsible neighbors that we are, we discussed among ourselves why in the world the owners had spent the time and the money to move the house rather than just putting all those resources towards starting over. Well, for a while, this home sat on cinder block. No one lived in it. And over the next year, we watched them fortify, strengthen, renew this home bit by bit from the ground up. And we never solved the mystery of the move, but we concluded that there must be something about the home, its history, its foundation, its bones, that they weren't willing to let go of. So they decided to fortify what they already had rather than to start over. And they already had the foundation they needed. There's something to be said about fortification. Now, this idea of fortification can be found throughout the ancient scriptures. In the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, the language is mostly used to describe the fortification of cities against invading armies. And by the time biblical authors were writing about Jesus, there had been centuries of invasions and kingdoms and regime changes. There'd been the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans and everybody in between. And it was clear that no amount of fortification could withstand the inevitable tidal wave of history just repeating itself. So there's language of fortification in the Apocrypha, which are the books between the Old and New Testaments. But by the time we get to the writings of the New Testament, we see this fortification language swapped with ideas that we tend to lump into one or two English words, usually translated as strengthen or reinforce. And while there is unfortunately only one or two words in the English language to describe the act of literal and metaphorical fortification or strengthening, there's at least 10 Greek words used in the Bible alone to explain all the nuance of what that means. Here's just a few. Hupazonome is used in the book of Acts, and it means literally to undergird, as in to undergird the bottom of a ship so it's not destroyed by the harsh conditions of the sea. And the believers were encouraged to huptazonome, to undergird themselves in the midst of all the things they were dealing with. Dunamu is the word used later in the New Testament letters, and it means to make strong, to enable, or to fill with power. And early Jesus followers were told to dunamu in the midst of persecution and hardship. Sterizo means to buttress or to become master of. And again, all these words are just translated as strengthen in our Bible. This is used in the Gospel of Luke to describe a steadfastness or a determination. And I think all of these words combined could be used to describe what fortifying actually is. Paul, the New Testament writer and leader, he actually uses the word sterizo in his letters to the very first churches in the city of Thessalonica. The first letter to the Thessalonians, it's actually the earliest of Paul's letters. It's actually considered one of the earliest Christian texts because it's written somewhere between 49 and 51 CE. There was a ruler at that time called Claudius. He was the emperor of Rome. And when he came to power in 41 CE, Christianity was just beginning to spread into the non-Jewish or the Gentile world. It was still considered just a branch of Judaism. So whether you followed Jesus or not, you were just considered a Jew to the Roman Empire. In Claudius's rule, it was plagued by a lot of stuff that included famine and drought and a lot of social uprisings across the empire, particularly in the capital of Rome where he resided. And by the time Claudius came to power, two important things had happened and were happening. First, some scholars believe that as Claudius developed an interest in the origins of Christianity, where in the world this Jewish sect came from, he learned about its leader, Jesus, whose followers had insisted that Jesus had died and then been resurrected. But Claudius's advisors, on the other hand, they were telling him that actually what happened to Jesus was that Jesus' disciples had robbed his grave. Now, what's important about that is at the time, there was a disease spreading throughout Rome and the Roman Empire, and it was believed to have been started and spread by tomb spoliation or violation. So disease was coming from these violation of tombs. This was apparently a big enough problem that Claudius gave an edict that the punishment for defiling or disturbing a tomb was death. And some think that Claudius blamed Jesus' followers for helping spread disease, starting with the movement of Jesus' body. Second, the Jewish people, for various reasons, had disturbed the peace in Rome multiple times and pretty significantly. So eventually, Claudius had all the Jews, Christian Jews as well, expelled from Rome. They were no longer allowed there. Around that time that the Jews were expelled from Rome, Paul, the leader that wrote these letters, Paul and his crew, they traveled to the city of Thessalonica to encourage and to teach at the new church there. And while they were there, Jewish unrest, similar to what had happened in Rome, it began to break out in Thessalonica, and Rome wanted to squash it quickly. So the citizens of Thessalonica, who'd been really hospitable to Paul, which included the Christians, they were brought before the Roman authorities, and they were charged with trying to incite an uprising. Not good. Paul, he was quickly ushered out of the city by his friends for his own safety, and he went to a city called Corinth. And a few months later, from Corinth, he wrote these letters to the Thessalonian believers. So you can imagine the recipients. They were a group of believers who were living through extreme social and political upheaval. They were being accused of all kinds of things. They were in personal and corporate crisis. And when Paul's letter got to them, the Thessalonians, they weren't only living under the veil of suspicion. In their daily lives, they battled drought and famine and disease like everybody else. And so many also had this belief, for other reasons that we can get into at another time, that Jesus was going to be returning soon, like within their lifetime. But as they waited, things just kept getting worse, and Jesus was nowhere in sight. There just seemed to be more and more acts of evil in the world. The vulnerable were exploited. They were targeted. Dangerous people were in power. His first letter that Paul wrote to them, he acknowledges this pain. But he didn't call for them to throw everything out and start again. Instead, he reminded them of who they were, and he reminded them of the good foundations that they already had. He reminded them of their Philadelphia, their brotherly love for one another, for their habit of deeply loving and caring and encouraging their own community, but also others in the midst of extreme difficulty. He reminded them of their propensity to question and to discern before blindly accepting any information that was given to them. Paul urged them not to let that go, not to throw it out. He urged them to fortify that. And he tells them literally to hold on to what is good and reject every kind of evil. Now, by the time Paul wrote his second letter to the church in Thessalonica, likely probably just a few months later, things had unimaginably gotten worse. So much so that many Jesus followers in the church were just starting to panic. Community members, church members, they were dropping left and right because it was so hard to be them. Paul was challenging them to do really difficult things. And they weren't like everyone else. They were outliers. They were outcasts. They were targets. There were also disagreements within the church. And managing life and church had become so exhausting that many people had just given up trying. Some of them just wanted to feel good again. And they were tired of their belief in Christ making them so uncomfortable all the time. So some left the community. Some decided, perhaps out of the need for understandable self-preservation, that they no longer want to engage with the world, but instead they were going to hunker down and they were going to just wait until Jesus came back. But the longer that didn't happen and the worse things got, the more panicked or apathetic the believers became. So Paul, who had himself experienced a multitude of discomforts, trials, persecutions, not limited to shipwrecks and beatings and torture and imprisonment and friendship loss, reminded this church community again not to give up on the foundations they already worked so hard to build. Let's insert our Greek words here as we read what he said, so we can have a little bit more thorough understanding of the text in English. It's Thessalonians chapter 2. Paul says, "So then, siblings, stand firm," or persevere, persist, hold fast, continue to hold, don't discard, retain, become master of the teachings we passed on to you, whether by word of mouth or by letter. May our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God the Father, who loved us and by his grace gave us eternal encouragement and good hope, encourage your hearts and strengthen, steady, fortify, make constant, undergird you in every good deed and word. Now, like I said before, there are times in Paul's letters that he called on people to become new creations. But that wasn't this time. This time he was calling for fortification, for strengthening. And it parallels well for us in 2024, I think. There was a lot in 2023, and there's a lot coming in 2024. And honestly, we just aren't sure what it's going to look like. Perhaps the pressure for resolution and new creation each January is why researchers suggest that only 9% of Americans that make resolutions complete them. 23% of people quit their resolution by the end of the first week. That's right now. And 43% quit by the end of January. Maybe this is because so often we try to live our lives by someone else's script. It's easy to believe that our lives should look like the lives of others, and so we throw out what we already know to be true and just try something new. Sometimes it's easier to be told what is true than to uncover the truth for ourselves. Or perhaps what we believe to be true about ourselves is that really it's our foundations, our cores that are faulty, that there are no good bones to begin with. But that isn't the truth at all. Think just for a moment. What is it that you already know to be true and good about yourself? Maybe it's something you're good at, an unexpected friendship, how you've grown in your responses and your emotions. Rest in the confidence that while we may be imperfect, we are worth investing in. We're worth fortifying. Choosing to invest in fortification rather than starting over honors the journey that we've been on so far. So years ago, one of my divinity school professors, Dr. West, had a personal practice where twice a year, every year, he would take time to refocus and orient himself around 3 simple words: be, know, and do. And it was so foundational and important to him, this practice, that he somehow found a way to make the reflection a graduation requirement for all of the students in the program. So before we were released into the world with shiny degrees, we were required to spend months writing a capstone paper that expounded upon how we had and how we would allow those 3 words to define us. And at the time, we hated it. It was so much work. And plus, we had to do an exit interview before we left, and where we bore our souls and told them about our capstone paper and hoped that our professors found our explanations worthy of a stamp of approval. But as much as I hated writing that paper, I have to admit it was helpful. And it continues to be. And similar to my professor, he would be so proud, I adopted a version of this practice where each year I revisit my own version of the be, know, do. Be. What type of person am I working to be? What's important to me? And how do I show that in the things that I invest in, and the things that I do, and the things that I spend time on? Know. How do I want to expand my mind? What do I want to investigate, to study, to learn, and do? How am I already involved in the world? Where do I want to be involved in the world? How does knowing and doing help fortify the type of person I want to be? Now, you could make an argument that be, know, do is a practice in new beginnings, an opportunity to start over and not allow our past to define our goals and visions of our future. Be, know, do could be new beginnings if we need it to be. But I think this year, be, know, do as fortification feels more right to me. Be, know, do is an opportunity to survey what we already know to be true about ourselves, and then to strengthen and build upon the good foundations that we have. Before we fortify, we have to know what our current foundations are. Before that house was moved, they had to survey if it could even be moved in the first place. We have to evaluate what's worth strengthening. I want to sit with this for just a bit and ask us some questions. What are the good foundations that we as a community have worked so hard to build? And what of these things do we need to continue to fortify moving forward? We have said we're a community who continues to work toward justice in our world, to recognize and call out inequality and unfair systems, and to invest in partners and others who seek that as well. We seek to provide a place for all people, regardless, to be reminded that they're loved and accepted and worthy of the love of God and of others. Sometimes we get that right, and we need to fortify that and strengthen that to get better. We're a community that has foundations rooted in the teachings of Jesus, of loving our neighbor and loving ourselves in all the forms. And we try to represent that in our budget and programming. What do we need to fortify? What do we need to strengthen? What do we need to be, know, and do as a community? What about personally? What type of person have you already been trying to become? Kinder, more merciful, a self-advocate, forgiving and gentler to yourself and to others, more generous, more grateful, bolder, a questioner, an advocate, more involved, less involved, more present, more boundaries, better at saying yes, better at saying no. This list could go on. You may have been building the foundations of that already, even if they've never actually left the caverns of your mind. These things and more likely don't require new beginnings. They require a deep breath and a survey, an acknowledgement of the good that is already in and around you, and fortification of the good foundations already in place. I want us to create our own be, know, do today. In the midst of all the things that you might be thinking about and all the things that you're looking forward to or not looking forward to, of all the expectations that are already in 2024, I want us to pause and be still and survey and take note of the things that we want to be, know, and do, that we want to invest in fortifying. So take out a piece of paper or take out your phone app, notes, and write down somewhere the words be, know, and do. Now let's think about these kind of as our foundations. So be, what type of person are you working to be? And list some things that describe that. How have you invested in that already? How about know? What is something you want to know this year? This could be actual knowledge, research, or intellectual or emotional growth, a class. It could also be a foundational truth you want to fortify in yourself. This may be something new, actually, that reinforces the foundations of who you want to be. Let's take some time to write that down, and feel free to pause the video if you need to. And then lastly, what do you want to do? How does what you want to do help you become more like the person you want to be? Or is what you want to do simply something that doesn't harm yourself or others and brings you joy? Those are worth fortifying. What type of community do we want to be? What type of person do you want to be? I think those are things worth fortifying. I think those are the things, the good things, the bones and the marrow that Paul talked about, that Professor West talked about, that are worth investing in this year. I want to close with a poem. Maggie Smith, she's an author and a poet, wrote in 2016 this poem called Good Bones, and I couldn't keep it out of my mind as I was thinking about this. You might have read it, or you're at least likely aware of it. It went viral in 2016. But I think it captures the idea of the work that we put in to fortify our good foundations amidst all of the static that's around us. And I will say that I changed one word or modified it just for any kids that might be listening. And it reads like this: life is short, though I keep it from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep for my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there's a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible. And for every kind stranger, there's one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I'm trying to sell them the world. Any decent realtor walking you through a real hellhole chirps on about the good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful. When we work, we can work to beautify, to strengthen, to fortify the good bones, the good foundations that already exist in us. They are worth investing in. You are worth fortifying. And when we do that, how much more beautiful everything can be. There is something to be said about new beginnings. But there's also something to be said about fortification. And here's to 2024 and all that it brings. Have a good week.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.